Looks okay now. You have to be a genius to use some of this stuff. All right. So I posted videos. I also pointed out, for those that are not sure, next Monday, I believe we have a holiday, yes?
Yeah,
So we won't be here on Monday. So I'll see you after today. I'll see you next Wednesday. Yes. What else? And readings. I do post the readings. And where do I put those? If you go on the left-hand side of the Blackboard menu here, where you have course content, that's where I post things like the list of philosophers for folks for your term papers. So you could look at those, decide if you like any of those. Notice I have the class notes for today as well as Monday. That's class notes 1 and 2. I will keep adding those, so you'll see a set of notes for each week all the way through. And that's also where the quiz questions will be. So if you're looking for the quiz questions, that's where you can find them the easiest way, right? I also posted a link of a file of videos from last spring, in case I end up not making videos or whatever, and you want to see what I did last spring. And I put that in both as a PDF and as a Word document, so you can have either way. So that's the main page that I'll add things besides the announcements. I do have the syllabus listed, and I should have that as well up so that we can look at that. But I'll go to my class notes. I don't know that they're very organized, and mostly I try to cover a few things that I discussed during the class. So hopefully, last lecture I just talked about what philosophy is, why I teach philosophy, why I love philosophy, stuff of that sort, right? You guys having fun so far? It should be a fun class. We ask questions that are considered intuition pumps. That was what Daniel Dennett called them, because these significant questions are supposed to not give you an answer. And that's one of the things. You don't really get answers in philosophy, you get questions, right? So I ask the significant questions that are supposed to make your head split open, and you have to think about it and resolve it. And typically what happens through history is we all end up agreeing, aha, this is the best answer to that. Let's move on to the next philosopher that's going to destroy that. And then we get another philosopher that destroys whatever answer we get from there. So we get, in a sense, what they say about science, that, from funeral to funeral, science advances. And what they mean by that is you have a theory, and everybody likes that theory, maybe for years, hundreds of years. And then someone comes along and points out, that's dumb. How come no one ever noticed this? And then you get a new theory, and the old theory might not completely go away. It might still be there. We might still say things like the sun rises in the east. How dumb is that? Right? But we still say it. And it sets in the west. And that's even dumber, especially in Alaska, right? Where if you're up, at midnight on some times of the year, the sun never goes down. And other days it never comes up. And then when it does, it comes up. Why is it over there? There's east, and it's coming up over here. And it's supposed to set in the west, but it goes all the way over here. So pretty silly. If you're Muslim and you have to face Mecca, which way do you face?
East.
Friend.
East.
Well, but west is actually closer, isn't it, to Mecca from here?
Oh, I'm sorry, I misheard the question.
You're supposed to face Mecca, right? And so it wouldn't necessarily be east. would be whatever way, which way I'm not even sure which way I'm pointing. But you get the idea. When you're on a globe, that could be an issue, you know. Which way is east? Which way is west? Especially in Alaska, because Alaska is the easternmost state in the United States.
For the meridian.
Right. So we're further east than the East Coast because of the Aleutians, right? That's just really fun. Okay. By the way, the quiz question for today, while I'm talking about weird things like that, is, does the sun rise in the, or no, wrong one. Is the Earth the center? Does the sun go around the Earth? Or, David already answered this one, right? Yes?
Yeah. Or does the
Or does
sun go around the Earth, or the Earth go around the sun?
heliocentric or geocentric?
Well, I didn't think about Sagittarius A star, so I liked your little YouTube thing there.
Yeah, I love this one because it leads us to an interesting question. Well, raise your hands. How many feel like the Earth is the center of the universe? It's two of us. How many feel like the sun is the center of the solar system? Why is that a conflict? Can't you believe in both?
Yeah, it depends on how you define it.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm standing on terra firma, right, which is a Philadelphian way of saying in Latin terra firma. Sorry, I grew up there, so I talk like I'm from Philly every once in a while. It's fun. I can say cheeseburger, hamburger, with or without, right? No problem. I do like to tell jokes. No, but seriously, in high school, which way did they tell you it worked? Heliocentric. So.
And they use the word rotate.
Yeah, and revolve. You get the revolve and the rotate, and which is which. Galileo, everybody's heard of Galileo Galilei. By the way, if you get to the fair, they have a nice presentation on Da Vinci, which is kind of neat. So if you get a chance, stop by, bring kids, because all the things are please touch, you know, so you get to play with them and see how they all work. But Galileo famously convinced a lot of people that the Earth moved and went around the sun. But
didn't the church not like that?
this is interesting. There's a book that I read years ago about Galileo, and it focuses for at least a chapter or two on the argument between him and his friend, Pope Urban. They knew one another, and Urban really believed that there are lots of different models, that the model that was theocratically correct, as far as the church was concerned, was that the earth was stationary and everything goes around the earth. And he recommended to Galileo, in actually pretty strict terms, don't tell everybody that it all goes around the sun. And he didn't actually. What happened was some of his friends published his book, even though he wasn't allowed to publish it. And in fact, they asked him for an introduction. So he wrote an introduction to the book and said, I didn't publish this. I'm not allowed to publish this, so I didn't publish it. My friends published it without my permission. It's kind of funny, actually, right? But as you know, he ended up in confinement, house arrest. But by then he was blind, you know, an 80-something and blind. He's probably not safe to go anywhere else besides his house anyway. And I know why Galileo was blind. Anybody know why Galileo was blind?
Stare at the sun.
He used the telescope to stare at the sun. And when his eye got sore, he moved it to the other eye to make sure he got both of them. But he was, he observed solar sunspots and things, and so he got in arguments about what the nature of the sun was, etc. So that's fun. But send me your response on email, whether you think it's the one or the other, or both, and I'll send you my reply on that.
Do these have to be like
Just emails.
long?
That's totally up to you. The quiz questions are as long as you want. So if you're upset with me over saying something stupid, go ahead and rant if you like. That is fine. Please feel free. Yes.
What are the due dates for?
The due dates, I usually think of Saturday evening as the end for each week. But I don't really count them all until the end of the semester, when I take all of your emails and I put them on my flash drive and I weigh it to see if there's enough. It actually decreases the weight of the flash drive. Yes.
And for the first question, what are the 10 Commandments? We just respond with, what are the 10 Commandments? And then
Or what you remember. And what's fun for me is when you remember like 6, and then you look them up, and then you see the other 4, or 5 if you believe in 11, right? And I remember them now. Because what I'm really interested in is how our memory works. And I'm just picking that because a lot of people I know had to memorize that stuff when they were kids, in religious, class or whatever. But then usually by the time you're an adult, you've not repeated them so many times that you've forgotten them. And I think part of the problem is that we have really good memories when it comes to remembering a story or a narrative, right? So for example, how many of you have seen the movie The Lion King? Everyone, okay. How did Mufasa die?
He fell into that herd.
Fell into the herd. But you could remember the whole, how he was set up by his brother Scar and everything, right?
Yeah.
So basically Mufasa died because he didn't move Fasa. Sorry. It's just true. If he had moved faster, he would have gotten out in time. However, okay. Notice you remember that whole thing. Can you even remember the music that goes with it while the herd is, stampeding and everything? It's good music, right? Yes? So, so it's all in your head. And you didn't study The Lion King last night to prepare for today's test, right? So it's all in there. Okay? It's a story, though. It's easy to remember stories. And once you get, if I'm standing here in ruby slippers and I start clicking my heels together, what am I thinking?
No place like home.
There's no place like home. At least if you've seen the movie, right? And if you haven't seen the movie, you might, what? What is he talking about? But if you saw the movie, you don't even hear your hard drive spinning to find that. It's already there. Actually, hard drives don't spin anymore, right? They're all, sorry, but digital memory, I guess. But so it's interesting. The hard things to remember, like the 10 Commandments, are kind of technical things, right? Instead of a story, there's no story that says after the first commandment comes this one, right? You have to remember them all separately, and just rote learning is usually the way we learn those, etc., right? So that is a difficult part, but it seems like we're homo neurons, man the storyteller, so we tell stories. So that's interesting. Can we try to make stories out of everything we need to remember? That's there's a movement to try to do that. Even math and stuff, trying to move it in that direction. However, okay. So we want to start with the story of philosophy, essentially. There is a series of books by Will and Will Durant and his wife wrote a series of books called The Story of Philosophy. And it's I think still a good long series of books, but it gives you the whole story of philosophy. But I like thinking of it that way because it is like one particular event leads to another. These are all logically connected, I think. And that's how I remember them and how I hope to present them. Right? But we want to start with Socrates in the Apology. And I should start off by pointing out that you could go to Wikipedia as an example of an encyclopedia. I mean, there's several different encyclopedias out there. Some are longer, some are supposedly called peer-reviewed. What's the difference between Wikipedia and the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy?